thank you everyone again. It's good to be back up here. And this is Lauren Sell, as just heard. We wanted to do a session. You know, we've heard a lot about the cloud, about kind of at a high level what OpenStack is, about some of the different technologies that are integrating with OpenStack and different companies that are working with OpenStack. And so we wanted to cover a little bit of what, if you are looking to get started with OpenStack, you know, what you can do, tomorrow to join the OpenStack community and start moving forward and getting more integrated into it.
And we're, at the foundation, it's a very small staff that is working to serve a very, very large global community, which we'll talk about here, but that's why these local user groups and events like this are so important, because it really kind of extends the community and helps get everyone involved. And hopefully today we can help with a few more ways, like Jonathan said, that are kind of practical to get involved and contribute or use OpenStack.
And we're also going to be taking questions, and I think that there will be mics available. So we're going to run through just a few slides, and then we're happy to answer any questions on any OpenStack related topic that you can come up with. And we can translate too. So if you would prefer to ask your questions in Turkish, then we can get the translation and try to give an answer. So just as Lauren said, you know, it's a very large, global, diverse community that has formed up around OpenStack. Vulcan this morning mentioned some different stats that, I'm sorry, those are a little out of date. We should have gotten you the more recent ones. But, there are over 500 companies in 160 countries and 27,000 different individual members all around the world that participate in OpenStack in different ways. And so, you know, that could be the almost 3,600, 3,700 people who actually write the software code and contribute to that, or these companies that, like the ones we've heard of today, that are building products and services that work with OpenStack, the different users who are building OpenStack clouds in all of the businesses across retail and finance and government and academic and, you know, all of the different industries that are using it. But, you know, we all come together in the OpenStack community to really try to move cloud forward as a whole, to try to make it more useful and something that we can all benefit from.
So before we dive in, we wanted to get just a quick show of hands so we know where to focus the presentation, but maybe to understand more about you and how you might want to get involved. So how many of you are developers who might want to contribute to OpenStack or work for companies that are contributing to OpenStack? Well,
all right, we got two.
We'll go through that section
two winners.
Quickly.
Yes, we'll not spend a lot of time on that one.
How many of you are building an OpenStack cloud or looking at running an OpenStack cloud?
Okay, good.
How many of you are building applications that run on top of OpenStack clouds or platforms that run on top of OpenStack clouds?
Okay, a few of those.
And how many of you are trying to start businesses, or maybe you already work at companies that are part of the OpenStack ecosystem?
Okay, good mix. And what do the rest of you do? Okay, so we have content for each of these sections that we can go through with just some basic next steps for how you can get involved, and then we'll open it up and happy to discuss whatever you'd like and answer any questions. So for the two of you over here, the two developers, if you would like to start contributing code to OpenStack, there are a number of different ways to get involved. And contributing is not just, you don't just have to be a Python expert to contribute code. We have a lot of operators that make small contributions. We have a lot of documentation that gets developed through the same systems. And so, you know, there's a lot of different ways that are available to contribute. But, these are some resources that are critical if you want to start contributing. Most of the communication around OpenStack happens online on public mailing lists and in IRC chat rooms. And that is beneficial because we are so distributed. We have people in every single time zone all over the planet. And so a lot of the discussions, we try to have them on a mailing list so that people can participate, as they go along and enter their workday. So the mailing lists are really important. And then there are regular meetings on IRC that take place. And if you go to these links, you can find all the mailing lists, and you can also find all of the different IRC channels that have to do with OpenStack. And then, there are some resources for getting started. DevStack is a very simple version of OpenStack that you can install inside of a virtual machine. And so if you want to just be able to look at OpenStack in its simplest form, DevStack, it's actually just a shell script that downloads the source code, configures it, and starts all of the services. And then if you are more serious and you really want to understand how open source works and how to become a big contributor, we actually do training, usually around the summits, that's really helpful. And we've had hundreds of people go through that and become contributors. And once you become a contributor, there are a number of steps to go through. You become an individual member of the foundation. You sign a license agreement. Everyone who contributes code signs a license agreement with the OpenStack Foundation so that we can make sure that the software always stays free. It's always going to be under the Apache license and available for people to use. And then start making use of the tools that we use for development. One of the things that's pretty interesting is all of the code comes through a review system, and it gets reviewed by other contributors before it's accepted into the project. And you can go to review.openstack.org and see all of the code as it's coming in and see in real time who's working on what and what's being reviewed. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about Python code, but a huge piece of the contribution is around documentation, and especially in the last year or so, there's been a big effort around internationalization. And so, our documentation, we treat that like we do the rest of the code. Anyone can come and make a contribution. You can make a small contribution or a big contribution. It gets reviewed, accepted in, and now becomes part of the OpenStack manual or the OpenStack Developer's Guide. And that, a lot of times, that's a good way to start contributing if you haven't before. We have translations in, I think, about 18 or 20 different languages that have some sort of translation inside of OpenStack.
And the dashboard.
Yeah, like the user interface, the web dashboard. And we're looking for assistance with Turkish translations too. So that could be another area where you could pitch in and help. For our development process, we do 6-month release cycles, and these are oriented around our summits. And usually there are milestones in between, and there are regular meetings on IRC to kind of track the release. And then we have the release, have a summit, plan the next release, and move on from there. All right.
Sure. So for those of you who are interested in building an OpenStack cloud or who may be operating an OpenStack cloud, we wanted to share some of the different resources and information sources that we have available. First of all, I just wanted to call out, we do a user survey every 6 months, typically just before the summit, so we can pull together these stats and make them available for the developers as they're going in to plan the next release. But this was from the most recent user survey, and all the information is available on openstack.org. But just to give you a sense of kind of the most popular industries and where the most OpenStack clouds are located right now in terms of the deployments that we are able to track. It's obviously not a comprehensive survey. I mean, it's opt-in, and we don't know everyone who's using OpenStack, but this gives us a pretty decent sample size to see what folks are doing. So, obviously a lot in the IT space, but also academic research and telco are very popular as well.
And this is also the geographic distribution of these deployments. OpenStack started out pretty heavily concentrated in the U.S. and especially heavily concentrated in Silicon Valley when it started a few years ago. But it's really spreading out. And I know that Turkey covers 2 continents, and both continents are well represented in the OpenStack deployments.
And wanted to talk just a little bit, another important piece, of course, are the business drivers around OpenStack. So interesting data from the most recent survey, and it's kind of hard to differentiate or order the top drivers, but basically operational efficiency, being able to move faster, to innovate, becoming a software company like Jonathan was talking about earlier, and then of course, avoiding vendor lock-in and cutting costs are some of the top business drivers that we see for OpenStack. But getting into just, if you want to use it, if you want to operate an OpenStack cloud, one hopefully very helpful resource is the marketplace. So if you go to openstack.org/marketplace, we have dozens of vendors that are listed here in different categories, whether it's a public cloud, whether they just offer training services or consulting services. There's also a pretty comprehensive list of drivers that are supported, which is fed through the driver log project, so basically drivers that appear in the trunk of the code. But anyway, however you want to consume OpenStack, if you want to build a cloud and you want a distribution or appliance, or if you're looking just to use a public cloud, hopefully you can find a good start here. And then of course we do have lots of documentation that's built up at this point. If you go to the documentation site, one particular guide that would be interesting is the operations guide that was written about a year ago or so, but there's actually some efforts right now to update that guide. But it's a pretty good comprehensive manual if you're getting started operating an OpenStack cloud.
And that operations guide, it's pretty interesting how it was created. The foundation basically funded a group of people who their full-time day job was running OpenStack clouds. We got them all together in a room for a week, and they wrote a book, and along with an author that's a professional author, and they actually wrote a book about how to run an OpenStack cloud, all of their experiences, and what different issues they ran into that they had to fix, things that they realized were really important along the way to operating a cloud. So it's based off of the real-world experiences of operators. And again, this documentation, gets updated on a regular basis. So if you are already running an OpenStack cloud, if you've run into different issues, then this is another area where you can contribute.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, at openstack.org, we have we're really trying to build up our roster, I guess, of case studies and white papers and reference architectures that go with that. So depending on what your use case is, hopefully you can find some useful information there, some different reference architectures or other companies who have done the same thing. And finally, another information source is Superuser Magazine. It's at superuser.openstack.org. We launched it kind of quietly about a year ago, but really in the last couple of months we've amped up the amount of content that we have on the site. This is where you can actually find more in-depth analysis of the user survey that we mentioned earlier. A lot of news coming out of the summit we would post on this site, but we're also always looking for contributors. So if you're interested in being an author or you have some stories to tell from the front lines, we're very interested in getting contributions from the community here as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've had any contributions to Superuser from Turkey yet. So if you have any experiences with OpenStack and you'd like us to publish them, then get in contact with us, because I'd love to feature that at Superuser.
And finally, another important resource is Ask OpenStack. It's actually a very active forum of pretty straightforward questions and answers that for anyone who's trying to set up a cloud or run a cloud, it can be a very helpful forum to check out. In the last, I would say, year and a half or so, we've really seen a shift in the OpenStack community as more clouds have come online. We've really seen this operators community grow. So if this is your area, I would really encourage you to join the operators mailing list. It's actually fairly decent traffic, I would say, 2 to 3 messages at least a day. But that's where they do a lot of coordination around this operators community, as well as a lot of operators are sharing experiences, asking questions, challenges that they're facing, that type of thing. So I would definitely get plugged in there. There is a user committee, just like there's a technical committee on the upstream side that's actually, governing the development of the OpenStack software. There's a user committee that's representing those that are using and are building and using OpenStack clouds. So that committee has been in operation for the last 2 years or so. They actually run the user survey that we referenced, but as of late, there's been more kind of specific vertical working groups spinning up underneath that, like the enterprise working group or the telco working group or the large operators that we mentioned here. And then they're also kind of expanding their governance a little bit to try to be more representative of the whole user community. So there's some really interesting things happening there. Like I mentioned, if you subscribe to this operator's mailing list, you'll usually be clued into what they're doing and where you can get involved. Well, one more piece to that. If you are running an OpenStack cloud, please take the user survey, because that's one way that we are able to track users and communicate with them. It's on the OpenStack website. And then we do have special kind of ops-focused working sessions that happen at the summits every 6 months, as well as there's a mid-cycle meetup that's happening in between the summits. They've been extremely valuable events for operators to get together and share feedback and kind of collaborate together. And the summits especially, we have a travel assistance program or travel support program that you can apply to. And those that are running OpenStack clouds or users are very highly valued in that program. So I would definitely encourage you to apply and try to attend the summit.
All right. If you're wanting to use an OpenStack cloud to build applications on top of, this is an area that we are really just starting to focus on this year. And so, obviously, Lauren mentioned the marketplace earlier. One way that you can do that is you can go look at the public clouds that are in the marketplace. These are OpenStack clouds that are out there and available for instant access, instant use, and you don't have to take on the responsibility of running and operating them. There's also a new website that is developer.openstack.org. And this has things like software development kits and documentations around the API. So if you want to build an application to run against the OpenStack APIs that can auto-scale and take advantage of the different services, storage, and compute and everything, then this is a good resource to go to at developer.openstack.org. And there's also some documentation that's on developer.openstack.org as well as docs.openstack.org that talks about the APIs. And there's a new document that we just made that's called Writing Your First OpenStack Application. And it's pretty, how old is it? It's like
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's just a couple of weeks old. So if you want to go check that out, that'd be great. And you may find things in there that need to be updated and corrected because it's brand new. So submit those, and we can make it better. We run an OpenStack environment called TriStack, and that's at tristack.org. And that is a free OpenStack cloud where you can go provision resources. They get cleaned up every 24 hours, so don't go try to start the next Uber on tristack.org. It will get deleted. But it's a really good way if you just want to try out an OpenStack cloud and want a free place to go make use of that. And then mentioned earlier the apps.openstack.org catalog. This is if you don't want to build an app, but you want to see kind of the applications that you can run on top of an OpenStack environment, how to deploy them, the configurations, the scripts that you might need to do that, then this is a good place to find those resources.
Great. We'll run through this really quickly because I want to have time for questions. But if you are trying to build a business around OpenStack or you're part of the OpenStack ecosystem, it is a very large community. I have over 500 companies that are participating, and there's been a lot of changes as OpenStack's matured, as the market overall has matured in the last couple of years, but there's still just so much room for new startups and innovation as we explore new use cases like NFV and Internet of Things, so it's very exciting. But if you have an OpenStack-based product, we have different marketing programs for that, whether it actually contains the software, like a distribution or a public cloud, and it's running it, that's an OpenStack-powered product, or whether it works with the OpenStack clouds or software, which would be OpenStack compatible. So this would be like tools that run on top of it or different applications. And then of course we have quite a few dozen companies around the world that offer OpenStack training programs. So there's more information on the website, but basically if you're building or you have an OpenStack product, definitely check it out and let us get you into the right marketing programs so that we can help support you and get you the right logos. Another thing that's very important to keep in mind that we've been talking about today, well, Jonathan this morning with the new kind of announcement around interoperability and federation. So we have developed these interoperability standards and testing. So if you are building an OpenStack product and you want to be part of this OpenStack marketplace and call it OpenStack, definitely keep an eye on these guidelines. It's at openstack.org/interop, and you can tell which code you need to include and which capabilities you need to expose in order to qualify as an OpenStack powered product. And finally, we have a very large marketing community in OpenStack. So if you're a marketer or if you have a company and you're interested in getting involved in these efforts, we have a portal with a lot of different collateral and graphics that you're welcome to make use of. We also have a mailing list. We hold open meetings at least every 6 weeks or so to talk about things that we're working on. And within that, we also have special verticalized working groups too. So definitely get involved. And finally, we have several channels and means to promote your product or business. We have a news page you can submit if you have product news or you're launching a company or whatever else. We want to help promote it. Of course, the marketplace that we talked about. We always love case studies, so if we can promote case studies in Superuser or other venues, we would love to do it. The call for speakers for Tokyo opens in just a few weeks, so that's another great thing to think about if you want to get the word out about what you're doing or what you're working on with OpenStack. So lots of ways to get involved. And these are the summits that we've already talked about a few times.
Yeah, so I think the big takeaway is there are a lot of different ways to get involved in OpenStack, whether you are contributing code, running a cloud, building a business. And at the OpenStack Foundation, our goal is to help all of those groups be successful in whatever their endeavor around OpenStack is. So hopefully that gave you, I know it was lots of links and lots of information. I saw people taking pictures. Hopefully you got the things that might be relevant to you. And that leaves us with some time for questions. If anybody has any questions about any of this or just about anything OpenStack related in general, we're happy to take that.
Bedrettin Vaizoğlu, teşekkür ederim. My name is Bedrettin Vaizoğlu. Thank you very much for your joining the meeting in Istanbul. But I asked my question Turkish. Can you explain please? OpenStack çok yeni bir pozisyon Türkiye'de. Bunun için eğitime ihtiyaç var. Bunun için bastırdığınız kitaplardan istiyoruz. Örneğin Malatya'da Ünlü Üniversitesi ile ilgili projelerim var. Burada 38.000 tane öğrenci var. Bu öğrenciler için projelerim var. Aynı zamanda Hollanda'da Rotterdam'da kurulan bir firma yöneticisiyim. Bunun için işbirliği yapmak istiyoruz ama eğitim ve kitaplarınızı almak istiyoruz. Teşekkür ederim.
So the question was about training and educational materials. And so that is one of the things that I think with new technologies like OpenStack, the skilled engineers always lag a little bit behind new technology because it just takes time for everybody to get educated and experienced. All of the books that we create and produce are licensed under Creative Commons. So that anyone can take them and use them. He was mentioning that he's involved in a university program with a lot of students. And so anyone can take that content and repurpose it and use it in different kinds of programs, whether it's a class or whether it's their own training. And we encourage that. And we also are happy to facilitate different work efforts and projects to translate that into as many languages as we can. If there's anyone who has experience with that or is interested in helping, then please get in contact with us, because I agree that it's one of the things that that's really important, and it's something from the foundation that we've tried to focus on. We're a small team at the foundation, so we rely on help from from our community all over the world. But if there are any of you who are passionate about that and want to help, please get in contact with us, and we will connect you with the authors and do what we can to make sure that you have material and resources to make progress on it. Is there another question here?
Merhaba, ismim Özgür Ekinci, Türknet. I'm going to ask my question in English.
Okay.
At this I'll try. First of all, can you say that in the market there are any competitors, against the OpenStack in terms of complexity, capabilities, and features? And that's the first question. And also I would like to learn about the operations costs regarding the other competitors. Let's say I'm using this same hardware or vendors, and I would like to build a cloud system. Is there any comparison about the operations cost of those platforms, including OpenStack? And the third one, would you say that OpenStack is mature in the market right now, or if the answer is no, when it's going to be? Would you say that OpenStack is mature on the market right now? If it's no, when it's going to be?
Right, okay. So the first was competitors, yes, and the second was operation cost, and then, okay, maturity, yes, all right. Competitors, I think that what's interesting is, when we launched OpenStack, there were a lot of different options like Eucalyptus and CloudStack and OpenNebula and different things like that. And a lot of those projects have not grown nearly as much as OpenStack. I think OpenStack has really engaged this global community like we've seen, and just kind of accelerated past a lot of the other options. And what I think is interesting is that actually, to me, a lot of the competition is within the OpenStack ecosystem. There's a competitive marketplace in OpenStack, and we just had back-to-back presentations from Canonical and Red Hat. So it's an enabling technology that drives a lot of different opportunities for businesses, and I don't think that there's anything else out there like that. Probably what I think we'll see over time, and what some people have said is like, well, OpenStack competes against AWS. But we actually have a lot of users who make use of Amazon's public cloud as well as an OpenStack private cloud. So I think that the short answer to the question is no, there aren't really any competitors, because it's an enabling technology that can help all of these companies to find out how to take the most advantage of cloud. Operations costs. So the OpenStack code is open source and it's freely available, and you can get it directly and use it for free. If you get it from certain distributions or certain commercial options, those may have licensing fees or support costs associated with them that are generally equivalent to what you'd find in the market with other commercial software, but usually still lower cost than a full proprietary solution. I think that honestly the biggest cost right now around OpenStack gets back to the first question, which is it can be hard to find experienced engineers because it's new technology, and so I would say the cost that is sometimes hidden is the cost of finding people with knowledge around it. I think that will go away over the next year to 2 years, just because there are so many people coming up now that are getting experience with it, that are learning about it. But I think that's probably where the biggest differentiated cost right now is. There's actually, what was the analyst report that that came.
451 Group?
Yeah, so 451 Group is an analyst firm, and they did a cost comparison, and OpenStack was actually the cheapest among any of the open source clouds, any of the commercial clouds, and public cloud as well. But it was more expensive on the people side, just because of that gap, that talent gap. But I think that, like I said, that's going away, and at that point, I think it will be really the lowest cost option.
The good news is, if you want to learn OpenStack, you have very promising career opportunities. So.
Yes, there's 100% employment in the OpenStack community. It's a very in-demand skill right now because of this gap. And the third thing, mature. So if you saw my presentation this morning, when I had the quadrant up there that had kind of maturity and adoption, there was a set of projects that were up at the top right corner, like Nova, Swift, Cinder, Glance, Keystone, Horizon. Those projects are all very mature, and we have deployments of all of those projects that range from a dozen machines to tens of thousands of servers, tens of thousands of physical nodes. And so those projects are all mature and scalable, and I think have been proven in production workloads in the finance industry, in the automotive industry, in government, in startups, software companies, all of those different use cases. There are other pieces, newer pieces, and some of the projects like maybe Salometer, for instance, that I think are people sometimes have more difficulty with. One of the things that we're trying to do at the foundation is, with these interop guidelines, we're trying to document very clearly what is mature, stable, reliable, something that you can count on, and then what is newer technology that maybe you need it and you want to use it now, or maybe you should wait a little while. But I think for the core compute, storage, and networking services, those have all been proven by hundreds of users around the world that you can run those at scale and run production workloads on them. All right, what else? I think we are, yes?
Hüseyin Çotuk from TÜBİTAK Ulakbim. What are your expectations from a local community to be a candidate for the summit? I think it will be great for Istanbul to be a candidate for 2017 summit, and what do you think about that?
So he was asking about the OpenStack summits. We take them to a different place around the world every 6 months, and he was saying, what do we think about having it in Istanbul? And we talked earlier about it, and I think we're going to try to. Our summits are very big events. We have a production crew that works on them and that helps us decide where we can put them on. And so we will definitely send them information on the conference centers that you have here. I think 2017 is already set, maybe. I don't think we've announced it yet, but I think we have pretty strong candidates already for that. They're so big now. We're actually planning 2020. Isn't that crazy? It's kind of mind blowing. But I think that the interesting thing is it's a central location to Europe and the Middle East and Asia. So geographically, it could make sense. We just have to see if it could work. One more. I think our time is up, but one more question if anybody has it. Yes?
Hello, Oldiçoğlu from TÜBİTAK. It's a governmental research company. My question is about the security, information security issues. What do you think the future of OpenStack will be regarding the security?
So, the question was security and OpenStack's kind of status on security. It's a really good question. That's one of the things that in the early days of cloud was the big fear that everybody had, is like cloud's not going to be secure. OpenStack, I think, helps with one of the biggest aspects of that by being available to run in your environment. So you can now bring it into your data center, and you can have all of your physical and your perimeter security that you're used to. So you can put it behind your firewalls on your network, on your servers, in your data center, and no one can get to it. That's that is, I think, a huge step, over public cloud in the first place. The other pieces of it are the way that OpenStack is architected. It's built into a number of different services, and so you're able to run those services independently. Over the last few years, it's become even more distributed and more independent, so that things like if one of your virtual server host machines was compromised, for instance, it doesn't have access back to any of the other parts of OpenStack. So there's separation built into the OpenStack software system itself to help guard those different things. And then it's called the OSSG, the OpenStack Security Group, which is a community team that has security experts from a number of different companies, including some of the top security companies in the IT industry, that all participate to look at different security issues that might be in OpenStack, report vulnerabilities, patch them, manage those vulnerabilities in kind of a very mature process, so that people have access to them and can be secure. But of course, ultimately, a lot of what OpenStack depends on includes other software as well, like Linux or different services that may be vulnerable. So when you're running a complex system of any kind, like OpenStack or any kind of infrastructure, it's a big issue that you can never say, like, this one piece of software is going to take care of it all, because then you have something like Heartbleed and SSL, and all of a sudden everything is vulnerable. But I think that the OpenStack, pardon me?
So they might throw us off stage.
Okay. The OpenStack Security Group and the architecture that we have helps to build security into the software as it's built and maintained over time. So, all right, we're out of time. Thank you guys for the questions, and thank you again for having us.
Thank you.